Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Valoppi. I'm the founder of the Women of Tomorrow Mentor and Scholarship Program. I created the Jennifer Valoppi Show to help support the thousands of at-risk young girls that we mentor each year at Women of Tomorrow. We've been doing it for the last 28 years now to remarkable success. I want to make the life-changing content available to women of all ages, everywhere, anytime. Now, long before Women of Tomorrow, I was a television journalist for almost 30 years. I was anchoring the news and conducting investigative work and doing lots of interviews and different shows. So this really brings everything full circle for me. This show exists to share honest conversations and meaningful stories about turning obstacles into opportunities, succeeding in today's world, and hopefully helping you create the life of your dreams. It's all about women helping women. Today's woman now is Katherine Fernandez Rundle, the Honorable Katherine Fernandez Rundle. Kathy is the state attorney for Miami-Dade County. She has over 30 years of service and is one of the longest running state attorneys in the country. She's the first Cuban-American woman in the state of Florida to ever be elected to this role. She's also my co-founder at the Women of Tomorrow Mentor and Scholarship Program, and I'm totally thrilled to have you here today. She has dedicated her life to uplifting the lives of at-risk young women and girls. And that being said, Miami-Dade County is one of the most complex legal jurisdictions in the country. And she has made the fight against human trafficking one of her central missions. So I guess, Kathy, we should start with what exactly is human trafficking?
I have to say something. I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and I'm so proud of how you always take your important message to a much broader group of people, particularly women. And so thank you for giving me this opportunity. That's so Jennifer Valoppi. So Jennifer, what happened was in 2012, there's a national database called Polaris, and it was originally designed to advise the Congressional Department of Health and Human Services where they needed to spend their money. And so they focused on human trafficking in the United States and worldwide and trying to figure out where are the victims so they could direct services.
Right.
Well, Florida rated third in the United States for the number of victims of human trafficking.
Oh, wow.
And Miami-Dade, you know, we love being number one on so many things.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we ranked number one in Florida for the numbers of victims of human trafficking.
Wow. So what are the other two top states, like New York and LA, or
California is very big. The Northeast is big. And the West, it's really Las Vegas. There is a circuit.
Wow.
There's a big circuit. They followed big destinations for events. So Las Vegas is one, Orlando is one, and Miami. Sometimes as we get deeper into this topic, you'll see or learn that a lot of it is based on where they're going to make the money the most. Where is the money going in the country in terms of buyers?
Okay.
And that's where they take a lot of the victims.
So when you say big events, does the traffic follow the big events? Like, do they go from Super Bowl to, you know, the next big event or the next big, you know, fight or wrestling match or boxing match or whatever it is?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's exactly what the data shows. So if you follow a lot of the victims and their pimps and their organizers, you can see they've been in other places. That really raises a whole nother issue, but I was invited to appear before a bipartisan congressional hearing, that committee really, that had a hearing just on this issue. And one of the things I recommended to Congress was, you need a database. We need to know where these bad guys are going, because if they're leaving one community and coming into our community, we want to know that. But that hasn't happened, but it's still something that needs to happen. But I would like to say that contrary to what I thought, I was very wrong about what I thought human trafficking was.
Okay.
And I thought that it was children, primarily younger women, young girls being trafficked from, like, say, for instance, the Philippines, and brought in cargo container ships to our fields to work the tomato fields that we have in our agricultural business and industry here in Florida, which is still the number one resource of finances for Florida. I was wrong. When I started to study this, when I heard we were number one, I called my team together, just like you would do, and said, I don't understand. Where are all these victims? Where are these cases? And we had 3. And it was at that point I knew, if we're not looking for human trafficking, we're not going to see it. And so I told the team, wait a second, we need to go on a mission. And I was on a mission. I had been a prosecutor for a long time by then. And I couldn't understand why I didn't understand this horrible modern day slavery that's happening in my community, and we don't see it. And that became my journey to learn and understand who they are. And what I learned was there are girls. They're mostly girls. 91% of the victims that we encounter in the criminal justice system are female. What's going to kill you is, because I know how you feel about particularly our young girls, the youngest ages begin at 11 and 12 years old.
Oh my goodness.
It's awful. And then, so our category of our girls, I always say there are girls in our parks, they're in our schools, in our foster care system is another unfortunate resource of vulnerabilities. And there are kids that we need to be taking care of.
Okay.
So we have tried to design a safety net of services. But back to the data, we found that 37% of the girls are under the age of 18. So that means they're ranging 13 to 18. And here's the kicker. The other 64% are 18 to 24. So if you look at that, what you see, and I can tell by your expression, it's getting you in the gut, because that means they're girls, they're little girls, right? 14 years old and as old as 24. That's it. That 10 years, our girls and our youth. And so that's when I really went into high gear.
But how do you know the difference between, like, for example, prostitution and human trafficking? What's the difference? Is it just because you crossed a state line, or is there something more fundamental to it than that?
It is more fundamental, but I understand that question, because I wasn't keenly aware what those distinctions were until I really dug into it. So I would say some of the distinguishing factors are force, proceeds, who's benefiting from the selling of sex, of selling one's body.
Right.
Is it you? Where are the proceeds going? Is it control and manipulation involved? Are you being raped? And they are actually. The national statistic ours is almost similar to that, is that they're raped 20 times a day, up to 7 days a week. It just depends on where you are and how horrific it is and how young you are, how vulnerable you are. There's a lot of different factors. The other issue is, how did you start? How did this happen to you? Was it voluntary, or were you a runaway? You mentioned this earlier when we started this conversation. And our data is almost identical to what's going on in the United States. 1 in 3 runaways end up being trafficked. 1 in 3 runaway girls end up on the street, and then 1 of 6 of them will be then brought into the ugly world of human trafficking.
So you mean they start saying, no, I'm a working girl, I'm a prostitute, this is me making this choice, and then they end up being trafficked?
No. Let me see if I can, because it's a hard line. So usually when we find them, we already know they're runners. So we know they're a runaway if they tells us the story, right?
Right.
I'm a runaway. I didn't know this. They get caught in a hotel. They're grateful somebody's coming to save them. Sometimes they're trying to text their mother. We've had cases like that. Yeah, texting their mother, Mom, come get me. I don't know where I am. Help me. So there's a lot of those kind of indicia of evidence. Is clearly this is not voluntary.
Right.
What sometimes does happen is when we have a large operation, undercover operation, when we have a big event happening, we employ different strategies. And sometimes, like for instance, when we did the Super Bowl in 2020, which is really what got me involved in these large events, a lot of the women, when we found them, they would say, no, I'm fine. Just leave me alone. I'm doing this because I want to do this. And there was no evidence to the contrary. So she's not going to say anything. She's not from town. She's not as young maybe as some of the others. If you're under the age of 18 legally, and I forgot to mention this piece to you, it's very important. Florida wasn't like that. You do not have to show coercion. All you have to show is you're under the age of 18, which means you can't consent, right? You're not an adult under the law to be able to consent.
In Florida.
In Florida, which is very similar to the federal law.
Okay.
We went to our state lawmakers and we said, we need what the feds have. The federal law says we don't have to prove she's 15 years old. Clearly, she can't consent to this. And so we were able we prevailed on that. So that's now the law.
But do you know, like for a state like Nevada, for example, is that true? Or do you know?
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't studied the other states that much. I do know in Las Vegas, in Nevada, they have certain ordinances to keep their streets sort of free of that kind of activity.
Okay.
And they give you 1 or 2 times. And anyway, that's a whole nother story. But part of, go ahead.
No, so I was going to say, so was there one case in particular that got to you so much that you said, I have to take this up as my mission?
There were a couple in the beginning that were really heartbreaking, and they're very graphic, but the audience needs to understand, and others that are listening who might be victims themselves or know someone who is or has been, it's ugly. So there were a couple in the beginning when I was really trying to understand this, me and my team, we were all really horrified by the data. So then it started to creep up to us, and people knew we were looking at these cases, so they were willing to report it. So there was a young girl, she was 16 years old. She was being inappropriately approached by a man in her house. This is very classic. Girls, sometimes mother gets a new boyfriend, has a new husband, or it could be an older male, comes from another country, or a cousin, an uncle, he moves in, and for whatever reason, he's there in the tent, and as soon as a young girl hits her puberty level, those men tend to take advantage of them, so they don't know what to do. Sometimes they tell mom doesn't believe them. Sometimes they don't want to tell mom, because they're afraid, oh my God, he's the one paying for this, he's the one paying for that. She's so happy. I don't want to tell her, I'm ashamed. All of those feelings that we all know start to enter into, so they leave. They just leave the household. And so she left the household and she went couch to couch, which is a phrase. And then she's like at the second or third girlfriend's house. And the mother looks at her and says, you got to go home. And so her friend says, you can go to my boyfriend's apartment. She did. And that was the beginning of a nightmare for her. He lived with her brother. They raped her. Then they took her out to the street in the car and would park in a gas station. And as the men would in the back of the gas station.
Oh my God.
And as the men would come and say, $25, step into the back seat of my car. And then it just got worse. But here's where awareness clicks in, and it's helpful. She ends up at a motel, and motels, so you just drive up, and so the buyers just drive up on front, and they go in and they come out and they leave. There's no concierge, there's no lobby, there's not a lot of eyes, right?
Right.
This hotel guy, he was so great. He saw the cars coming and going, and she was raped, she testified. She was raped that night every half hour. And so at the end of 12 hours, that guy calls our hotline that we established. And we were able to go out there and rescue her. And when we wanted him to testify, he says, please don't tell my boss. If my boss knows I'm turning in people that are coming here, patrons, I'm going to lose my job. And so that was so horrifying to me that this girl had nowhere to go, right? It's got all of the elements of true torture, modern day slavery in it. It was so grotesque. And then there was another case. It was a 13-year-old. Very similar.
Oh,
I know.
makes my skin crawl.
I know. It's chilling. But it's real.
Yeah.
And that's
for sure.
why I'm so happy you're talking about it.
Yeah.
Because for too long, it was happening in dark alleys and nobody wanted to talk about it.
You know how many times at Women of Tomorrow, a young girl would tell me that, the mother's boyfriend was abusing her, but she would tell her mother and the mother didn't believe her. Right. So, this all resenates. Anyway, go ahead.
It does. It all begins. It just how that tapestry starts and unravels in a young girl's life.
Yeah.
And how you, through Women of Tomorrow and other services that we can pull it all back together again is so important. So the 13-year-old, same thing, at home, older man, mom's boyfriend. She's 13. and he just sneaks into her bedroom late at night. She's 13. She doesn't know what to do. She has nobody to talk to. So she runs, and she ends up about 3 days later at a flea market, right? 1 in 3 run away, flea market. It's usually within 72 hours. That's pretty much what the data shows nationally and locally. And she runs up to this couple. They see her. She's dejected. She's sad. She's crying. She's looking down. She's ashamed. She's alone. She feels isolated. You know, the bad guys pick up on all that. That's what they're looking for, vulnerabilities. Right. So they see her. It's a man and a woman, and I hate to say this. There's a phrase for it. They call them bottoms. And what that means is the girl, so it's a woman and a man, the woman was previously her victim herself. Oh. And in order to save herself from the daily tortures and the beatings and being drugged and raped, they have to find somebody to replace it. And the younger they are, the more valuable they are, unfortunately. So the bottom, this woman who was originally a victim, and the male recruit her and say, listen, come home with us. We'll take care of you. We have a house. And so this little girl says, oh my God, this is such a blessing. You know, I've got a family finally. A man and a woman want to take care of me in a house. Well, you can fill in the rest of the story. She goes to the house. They immediately rape her. It doesn't end there though. She then, they train her how to have sex. They dress her in provocative ways. They put her out in the street. And now social media is starting to catch up. So a lot of this recruitment now is happening. They line up the Johns online. And,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's evolved too. It was usually street stuff that we were dealing with, and now 40% of it's online. So anyway, this little girl goes out and she comes back. She'd been raped by 6 men out on the street. He didn't protect her, and she came home with no money. So he takes her to a tattoo shop. And for maybe some of your listeners, you may have seen this. It was on the front page of our local primary newspaper, and it was just her eyelids. He took her to a tattoo artist, and across her eyelids had printed his brand, which was Suave House, which just means my great house, right? And so can you imagine 13? So make a long story short, she was rescued. The tattoo artist came forward. And so we were able to find them. We found her. We rescued her. She could not testify. She was broken down, you know, went into emotional breakdowns. And I think we had to do things to take her in to get treatment and medical stuff. Anyway, make a long story short, the only way we made that case was through the tattoo artist. The tattoo artist came and testified. We were able to tell the rest of the story. And the bottom, the woman, we saw across her clavicle area here, Suave House. Okay. That's how we knew. So he's went to state prison for 20 years, I'm happy to say. But, you know, those are the kinds of cases that, you know, till this day I get chills. And we still see her, the 13-year-old, that was, you know, maybe 7 years ago. Wow. Yeah.
I actually remember you telling me the story of the girl with the eyelid tattoo many years ago. And, you know, it's kind of like some things you can't unsee. You know, once you've got that in your head, you never unhear that story. I mean, it's such a horrible thing for such a young, for anybody, but especially for such a young girl. But okay, so it really begs the next question. So when you do find these girls and you do find the perpetrators of these crimes, going after them can't be easy because you have to get the girls to testify. And how traumatic is that for these young women to have to testify to the horrors that were done to them? I mean, not like they want to live this again, right?
You are so
how do you
right.
deal with that?
I'm sure in a previous life you were a lawyer. Well, we talk about it all the time.
I play one on TV, right?
Right, exactly. And that investigative reporter in you. So that became a real challenge for us because you're absolutely right. A classic case of prosecution, they're not all easy, but you know, I rob you, I put a gun in your face, I say, give me your jewelry, give me your purse, and you remember that, that person gets arrested, and you say, that's the guy, this is what he did, and this is what he said.
Right.
Case over.
Right.
These cases were such a challenge for us because a prosecutor had to make a terrible decision. He used the word trigger. We now know from all the neuroscience within the last 20 years that when you ask somebody to relive an adverse experience in their life, it leads to terrible consequences, depending how often, how many times they've experienced, how many times they've had to talk about it. And when we learned all that, we realized that we didn't want to do that, because sometimes we were having to Baker Act our own victims.
Oh, wow.
And they would break down in depositions, which we had to change. I know you know depositions are an adversarial setting where a defense lawyer will take a statement from the key witness for the prosecution. That's all kosher. It's an archaic law. We've since changed it, but that's what the law was. So it wasn't just telling the police officers what happened. It wasn't just telling the prosecutors what happened. You'd have to sit in a place where you'd have to tell your story under cross-examination. It wasn't their fault. Those defense attorneys were doing their job. And then if you had to go to court and look at the guy who did all this to you and then tell your story about your body and your feelings and how broken you were and why you did this. And so we had to change the way we focused on prosecution. We call it trauma victim prosecution. Our whole focus is on the victim. So you know what we did? And I have some really good graphics. Maybe you'll show this. We decided we're going to plan as if she's unavailable. Unavailable for trial, unavailable for everything.
Right.
And we do differently. So we do phone cells. We sell cell sites. We do hotel registries. We do any kind of, like the tattoo artist. Was she on the street? Any closed circuit TV that we can get. We look at social media, which has actually come to help us because they love to brag, right?
Okay.
They're either posting the victim, Lolita,
wow.
I'm Lolita, do you want a nice night or something like that?
Okay.
So some ways technology, even though it made it easier for the guys to sell, it made it easier for us to make, not easy, but easier to make our cases.
It's like the criminal that, goes out and says, oh, look what I just stole, right?
Yeah, they do that with guns all the time. You know, they put them on probation so you can't carry a gun, and then they're posting with their guns.
I want to just backtrack 1 second because you said, sometimes we had to Baker Act them, and a lot of people probably don't know what it means to Baker Act somebody. So why don't you? So
it's become the catchphrase. It's a legal phrase for those who have to involuntarily commit because they're either a danger to themselves or a danger to someone else. In a case like this, it would be a danger to herself.
Right.
And so, they have an emotional and psychological breakdown, and you want to get them under professional treatment to make sure they don't hurt themselves. They don't go on to do something like suicidal or cutting themselves. There's horrible things that people do when they're crushed like that.
Yeah.
Their spirits are crushed. They see no hope. And so sometimes we had to do that to protect them.
Sure.
And eventually they were, they come around, but they're forever. Their lives are forever altered.
As one can imagine.
Yes.
You really can't imagine what it's like to go through something like that when you've never been through something like that before. So what kind of a prosecution rate do you have? What kind of a conviction rate do you have on these cases when you go after them? Do a lot of these guys go to jail?
A lot of them do. And a lot of it has to do with education. So now we've spent the last, since I told you that was 2012. So we've spent the last 10, 11 years educating, starting with us. We had to educate ourselves. We had to educate the judiciary. We had to educate the public, service providers, law enforcement, firefighters, nurses in trauma rooms. We had to all understand what is human trafficking because a lot of us had no idea what it really meant.
Right.
So now people are actually talking about it. I know that sounds like a silly success, but it's not, because that's the only way we're going to have those conversations, to have people come forward, not be ashamed, to have others that are involved in it come and testify, to have police officers. It's not being kidnapped. And we used to go to court and they'd say, but she wasn't kidnapped. And, and I got that. We understood that. Because we all had these myths. It was like the movies, like Taken, but we learned. So we all learned together, and so our prosecution has improved with time. The rescue piece is what's really improved as well. Okay. When we first rescued them, there was no shelter in all of beautiful Dade County, Miami-Dade County, for victims that were 18 and over. And so we had to find a place. We had to create, and we did. We created, it's called Phoenix Project. And so now we had a place at least to keep them quiet. They could decompress.
Keep it, when you say keep them quiet, you mean to relax.
Yes,
and
I didn't mean, you're
peaceful.
right, not to speak, you're right.
Right.
Thank you for correcting me on that. To let them compensate and not live in fear. And sometimes they are drugged out because they give them uppers so the girls can keep working.
Okay.
And then they give them downers, during the day so they can sleep and get ready for the night. So they're confused and they're afraid that he's going to come back. Because oftentimes, a lot of these young girls, they'll say, I know he's a bad guy, but you know what? He's my bad guy. And he's feeding me, he's dressing me, he's sheltering me, and they don't know that there's an alternative life for them.
Right.
There's a safety net of services. So once we were able to create those pieces, they passed a law in Florida. It's called the Safe Harbor Act. And if you are under the age of 18, you immediately go into a therapeutic foster care system. And also, you don't prosecute anymore little people that are under the age of 18. If you find them out on the street prostituting, quote unquote, themselves, we're probably behind them as a pimp. So all of those pieces, all of us being aware, the media has helped us. This presentation, Jennifer, that you're doing, there's some vulnerable girls out there who may be watching this or know a sister, a cousin, a friend, a playmate and schoolmate. So this really helps bring those cases. So we are able to rescue them and to prosecute the pimps.
Okay, so if you know someone that something like this is happening to, what do you do?
So that's such an important question. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows there are hotlines. And I want to start with the one that's manned, I should say staffed rather, 24/7. And it's 305-349-7867. You can also do it textually, which is 305-FIX-STOP. And there's a QR code. Sometimes if anyone is seeing this now, you can immediately put that on your phone. And if you don't see this and you're listening to this instead, know that there are posters everywhere. There are billboards that are up. If you go through the Miami International Airport right now, you will see signs up everywhere. So all you need to do is take down that number or just put your phone on it. And the advantage of having a QR code is when you leave, it's locked in your phone. And if the bad guy is with you, he doesn't see you dialing. You save it for later. So please take advantage of that. Of course, we have our website. You go to the state attorney's website. You'll see all of the information, signs, what to look for, who to call, what if you don't want to do anything criminal justice related, and you just want to go to a shelter. We have all of that information available at both that hotline, 305-349-7867.
Okay, so again, 305-FIX, F-I-X, stop. So let's say you call this hotline. What's going to happen next?
So we have a team. It's about 7 to 10 people. They take turns. They rotate who's on. They're on 24/7.
Okay.
As soon as that call comes in, hi, actually, we have someone who's wonderful. I was about to use her name, but I shouldn't really do that. She's on staff. Tanya's her name. She's very proud to be one of our rescuers. She will immediately, who are you? Where are you? I'm on such and such a corner, such and such a street. Hurry up. I just ran out of my hotel room. She immediately gets one of our police task force members. They go right to that corner. They immediately rescue her, talk to her, put her in a car, and then take her, if she wants, to a number of shelters, or she's not sure yet. I don't know. I'm confused, which most of them are. Understandably, they will go to what we now have established in 2018 is the first human trafficking center that I'm aware of its kind.
Okay.
And I know Women of Tomorrow is going to come and do a board meeting there soon. I'm so excited to host you guys. But this is a building, has no address, and it's 5 stories. Each floor has a different purpose. One is just for the victims. We have a shower, couch, a kitchen. All of that's been donated from a number of different wonderful people in our community. They can just relax, and just not be scared. They're safe. And then from there, we take their statement, who was doing that, what's his name, where'd you find him, where do you live, and we try to get her back on track.
Okay.
And then go get him and arrest him if we can. Okay. And that happens fairly quickly.
And then what happens if the guy gets out on jail? What happens if he gets out on bond and then you're terrified again, right?
You are so right. So this has been the building blocks. We talked about having to change the law in these last 10, 11 years. That was one of them, because that was always a problem. So now we have the law is changed. If you are charged with human trafficking of a minor, it's non-bondable offense, which means you cannot get out.
So that's Florida?
Florida. That's a Florida law that we were able to pass, I guess, about 3 years ago. So it's been a huge, he's going to get out. He's going to come find me. He can't get out. And so that's a big piece, not necessarily for the 18 and up. We have to go to court and we have to ask the court to detain that person for the following reasons. And the judiciary is much more enlightened, as we all are. And they get it. They understand that he could pose a risk.
And make sure she's in a safe space in
yes,
the process.
and or flight, because not all of the pimps are local.
Right.
So so there's different arguments for different cases.
And can you extradite someone from another state if they flee and go to California or New York?
We can.
Okay.
And we do.
Okay.
And we will. So anybody listening out there, you may escape for the moment if that happens, but we will find you. And we will hold you accountable.
It doesn't always involve kidnapping, right? As you explained, a lot of times these girls are just coerced. They think they're going to a safe space. And then the next thing you know, they're just held without,
That's right.
against their will. How, what about, especially being in a place like Miami or a lot of these gateway community sort of things from other countries? What happens if someone comes from outside of the country? I mean, there's a lot of human trafficking going on there with people who come to this country and then somebody takes their passport away, right? And then they're really stuck?
That is such an important point. You're absolutely right. So one of the things we're now engaged in heavily. So once we talked about the local influence being greater, now when you have major events, and we have a lot of major events coming up,
right?
You have a different population of victims, you have a different population of purchasers, the demand side, and you have a different population of the pimps. And so now the victim, in some ways, if she is from out of state, she's more vulnerable. If she's from out of country, she's more vulnerable. Because not only do they strip these victims of their dignity, they strip them of their identity. So their driver's license, passports, as you mentioned, any identifying features, they're gone. He has them. And that's part of the hold over them. The trick there is to be able to convince someone that it's not going to necessarily jeopardize their status. Because on layers and layers of fear come into play, right? Not only am I afraid, I don't know where I'm going to be deported. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't have any way to get in and out. I don't want to leave. And if this is part of what I have to do to stay in this country, then that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
So
really?
Well, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
No, I know. It's a vulnerability, right? Yeah. So, we've had not many cases, but cases especially of mothers who are trying to find an education for their only child that move here from, we had a very sad case. I won't go into it again. I don't know how much time we have left, but she came from Guatemala, single mom, and she had a 13-year-old daughter. And all she wanted was an education that she knew her daughter was never going to get. And that was her only hope in life was, education, knowledge is power. She came to this country. She ended up in the fields, and immediately she was a woman of faith, and she would go to church every Sunday with her little girl. And then the little girl disappeared, went to a man of faith that they met in church every Sunday, and he raped her and put her in the fields to work. And fast forward, when one day she saw her mother, who also worked the fields, to try to pay for the rooming house that they were sharing, the daughter just made a beeline across the tomato fields and ran to her mom, who'd been looking for her, and told her the story, and she had to make a decision. I mean, I just admire that woman so much. She had to decide, do I go to the police and tell them what happened to my daughter, and then I'm going to have to leave the country? Or do I stay so this doesn't happen to any other little girl? And you know what? She stayed. She was brave. She was courageous. She came to us and the authorities. we were able to rescue her, and we got her a U visa. So she's now can stay in this country.
Really?
But she didn't know that.
Okay.
You know, so the decisions, and I use that as an example because this was a mother and a little girl, but there are women who are over the age of 18.
So there is help for these girls.
Yes.
And we're saying girls, and I know we're focused on girls, that is the majority, but it's not just girls. So it's not only girls that are the victims of trafficking.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. We do tend to focus because they're the majority. So boys and young men are really even more vulnerable because there's, for whatever reason, societal shames come into that. There's less in terms of services for them, and they feel more trapped. And there's another population, the trans population, is another complicated challenge. You talked about challenges and opportunities, obstacles and opportunities. There really is less opportunity for boys to rescue themselves or for us to rescue them and bring them out of that disgusting hole that they're in. And we know that. We talk amongst ourselves. We have a policy institute. We do a forum once a year to talk about what have we done, what are we doing now, what do we need to do. And that's one of the gaps. That's one of the gaps we know we have to fill. And that's one of the challenges. But it's there, and we're working on it.
And what's their story? Is it usually that are they being sexually abused at home and so they run away, or are they being physically abused and so they leave an abusive household or father or something like that?
So one of my first cases, it is slightly different. It's interesting you bring that up because you're so intuitive. It's slightly different, although they're different forms. There's organized and and there's romance.
Right.
The little girl, the pimp with the tattoos, she was romanced by that. She was just thinking, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. Someone to love me and have purpose.
Right.
With the boys, it tends to be more that. They really they're looking for affection, they're looking for companionship, and they fall into the hands of the wrong person. The person starts to romance them. They feel they're in a secure relationship, and then they're not. And so often they've given, they've given into that person's apartment, and they have nowhere to go now. They don't know what to say. They don't know who to turn to. It's not as readily available to them. But if anyone is listening to this, and again, know somebody is something, we know how to handle that. We have a survivor's pathway, which is a wonderful program in our community. It is particularly for males, and they address those issues so that do know that our sphere is not as great as it is for the girl population, but we're there for them too.
So it's young gay boys generally.
Generally.
Okay. So because you don't have to be a gay boy to be taken into a gay lifestyle of sexual of human trafficking.
That's
right?
true.
That can happen too.
That can happen, and there are those kinds of abuses that start, inappropriately. Sometimes it's in a church, and it was by someone they trusted, a coach, a teacher.
But especially with a young boy.
Yeah, I'm talking about with a young boy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was on that same theme. Somewhere along the line in the beginning it happened, and then that's what they knew, and they became more vulnerable to that lifestyle, and then they get so trapped. And so we really do need to understand that dynamic better too.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about Women of Tomorrow, the Women of Tomorrow Mentor and Scholarship Program. So we basically started that together.
Yes.
First of all, I remember years ago when I was doing the news here, and you were actually a new state attorney.
Yes.
and relatively
so
new.
much
I think we
different.
started here around the same period of time. I
Yes.
remember we wrote an article together on the Commission of Women. We
yes.
remember we wrote
the
an
Status
article
Commission
together.
of Women, yes.
Yeah, and we were talking about some of the statistics with young girls and how they get into trouble, and
Yes.
when they do get into trouble and they go away or to some sort of a facility or
Yes.
something like that because they've broken the law, and what the recidivism rate was,
That's
and
right.
what we could do to change that, and that's when we first started on the whole Women of Tomorrow journey, which was like, 1997, believe it or not.
Boy, were
right?
you ahead of your time,
I mean,
Jennifer. You were
was,
amazing.
It was pretty crazy, but we started that together along with Don Brown, who was the former president of NBC News and also the president of Telemundo.
Yes, God rest his soul,
Yeah, Don passed away a few years ago, but we all started that together. And women as a mission, it's become both of our missions in so many ways, because women are the most vulnerable in our society in so many ways. And because, as you recall, I think we talked a long time ago that the real problem with equality between men and women is not so much that men think that women are inferior. The problem is that women often agree. And increasing the self-esteem is one of the greatest things we can do. I mean, how do you see that play out in your life? You talked about being vulnerable, but so how do you see that self-esteem, really
manifesting itself and as a vulnerability? So I want to get to that, but I also want to just address the Women of Tomorrow issue real quick.
Okay.
You're not going to escape a praise there. Okay. and because maybe there are other people in this country that are observing this and know that they can learn from your leadership and your vision. And I do remember that very distinctly when you had that vision. And I remember you saying, I really want to focus on these young girls. And you had recounted stories. And I thought about that, and I was seeing it from somewhat of a different perspective at that time. I had always seen them as vulnerable in the criminal justice system, as victims of victims. But then, right when you were approaching me, there was a rise in crime by teenage girls. And I don't know if you remember, I said, oh my gosh, the timing of this. And it was girls getting wrapped up in gangs. So anyway, when you came to me with that idea, I just was like sold immediately. I mean, I sold from the minute you said, can I talk to you? And a lot of it had to do with your own determination. I mean, you are a mission-oriented person through your career, through your family, everything I know about you, all these 28 years. And what you created was the right focus. So you started young when that self-esteem is so fragile in so many in our schools and not in our schools. And you created this really great idea. And I was so happy to be partners with you on that, because lack of self-esteem is probably the number one first indicator that that person needs to be rescued. We need to mentor, as you created. We need to mentor those girls in particular. And by the way, the boys, we already had 500 role models.
Right.
And
there were other organizations.
There were other organizations, which I was a member of also, and I used to say to them, you need to include girls. And they'd say, no, we don't. And so Jennifer Valoppi came along and did that. But what happens is, I think that Women of Tomorrow has given them so much value. So not in what they can do, how they can do it. And you have these incredible women that donate their time. And then you create these field trips. And they go and they go see the Jennifer Valappis on camera doing, investigative reporting. They go to the state attorney's office, my office, and they see, oh, wow, there's judges and bailiffs and court interpreters and clerks. There's so many prosecutors, so many things that they can do. So you open their horizons. They're not stuck in a little track that they don't see themselves beyond. And then you came up with scholarships. So it's one thing, right, to say, okay, I feel better about myself. Now I see a career, but now I got to go to college. I realize I got to go to college to get anywhere. And in this world, you probably do. I mean, trade schools are good too, but you got to.
We give scholarships for that too.
I know you do. And so I think it's brilliant how we, of the team you put together, has been able to combine those two critical factors. They're life-altering factors that you've created for these girls. And I mean, the success speaks for itself.
Well, this is all about, and by the way, we have like a 98% high school graduation rate among an at-risk population. And one of the things we know about that is if you do graduate from high school, you have a way more likelihood of success in your life. The vast majority of our girls go on to some form of higher education. And as you pointed out, it doesn't have to be college. It doesn't have to be college at all, but it's, it can be trade schools. The world needs all kinds of people. And especially as things are changing with with AI and jobs are changing and that sort of things, it becomes more and more important. But the idea of helping girls and helping them create, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, all teenagers are at risk. I use the term at risk. We mentor in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And then we have a big alumni organization that, has, some of our alumni are in their 40s now.
I know, it's
which
great.
is really crazy. Doesn't seem like it could have been that
changed
long
a bit,
ago.
I promise.
Yeah, right. Doesn't seem like it could have been that long ago. But, part of the concept is if you really want to break these cycles of violence and poverty and abuse and things like that, you have to uplift the lives of the young women who are raising the next generation. And that's really what Women of Tomorrow is all about. But it totally goes into this whole thing of human trafficking, the idea of having the self-esteem to not only not get involved in it in the first place. Sometimes you're dealt very bad situations in life and you get scared and you flee a really bad situation. You don't know that you're going to end up in an even worse situation.
That's right.
Right? But it's that self-esteem to have some sense of self-worth and to have somebody who cares enough about you to mentor you and to help you understand that there is another way.
Yes.
And what you guys have done, I think at the state attorney's office and at the governmental level, is create this safety net so that you can help build the protections for these girls so that they actually have somewhere to go and that they actually have a safe space that they can go to where they're not going to be, abused or trafficked or whatever. And is there anything that's done to then help them get maybe to the next level, job-wise?
Absolutely. But in addition to what you were talking about, so it's getting them off track, but it's they have to believe it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things Women of Tomorrow has really done. They've been able to show, not only through success, but that one-on-one, right? That they believe it.
Yeah.
And so once you believe it, then you can be it. So I also want to say the other thing that's a corollary to the Successful Women Tomorrow is not just the recipients, right? The girls that are vulnerable. It's also how you give, somebody always says, how can I help?
Right.
What can I do?
Right.
And so you gave them sort of that field, build the field and they will come. You did that. We did that. When this
we did
vision,
that together.
So we did that together. And so you had all these incredible women, other women, adult women, maybe they'd even been through something similar. Not, the abuse levels are, 1 to 10, but, where they felt they didn't have self-esteem and they've had a successful life. They were able to bring themselves to a quality of life that worked for them. And they wanted to share that with a younger, vulnerable woman, a young girl. And I think that is what that formula has just been such a success.
I want to, before we wrap things up here, I want to just go back to the human trafficking a little bit. If someone is afraid that their child has been trafficked, how do they find them? What can they do?
I hate to keep taking back to the hotline, but the hotline, truly, I mean, there are signs and you can go to, if she's in school, we work like this with the school system. We have curriculum now. We had a cafeteria worker who rescued 2 recent immigrant girls. They were 13 and 15. She spotted it right away. Why? Because we're training awareness, what to look for, the signs. We have billboards with all the signs up so everybody's aware. And if you think, and even if you're not sure, we said, don't worry about it. Let the professionals make that decision, right? You have a creepy feeling. You have an intuition that maybe you saw something or, you feel like something is going on inappropriately, you call our hotline and we will immediately respond. If the girl's in school, if the girl's in foster care, a neighbor you think is in trouble, it's somebody else's daughter, just reach out. That's the key.
But will law enforcement help you if you think you know someone who is a victim? I mean, if you have a child who disappeared or ran away or something like that, how do you find a kid like that? Is there any way, are there any tips or something for parents who may be terrified or worried that their child ran away and that they're afraid they're victims now?
Yes, and that's really important piece. So if you feel like, let's say it's a runaway person and you're not sure, but you don't suspect human trafficking, there are all kinds of organizations, John Walsh, Missing Children, NCMEC, the National Organization for Missing Children. We work with them, by the way. We go and rescue, we take law enforcement and assist them to go find these runaways, because we know that a large majority of them are going to end up in this disgusting world of human trafficking. But so law enforcement, and maybe I should make this clear, we're not just a social service agency. We're not. We are law enforcement, our office, what we do. No, just in case, but we're only as good for these victims as the safety net is. So that's why we work so hard, and we mention all the shelters, the Thrive Clinic for the girls that have never been to a doctor because they've been isolated. All the pieces that we built because we want them to survive. We do not want the predators to survive. So we have a task force. It's in our human trafficking center that I told you about. And one floor is all dedicated to 70 different agencies that we have there. We have 36 police officer types from different police departments, HSI, Homeland Security, FBI. We have Florida Department of Law Enforcement. We work, Secret Service does all our transcription on the text messages. Those phones are a huge piece of our evidence. They can deny it all they want, but it's usually somewhere in that text message or photographs. So it's that task force is what goes and rescues the girl along with our victim witness counselor. And then we'd make a decision. What's best for her? What's best for the case? Do we have him anyway? And each one is decided on a case by case. But we work with missing children. We just did a huge operation, I guess about 6 months ago, with our U.S. Marshal.
Okay.
He's amazing. He was from here. Now he's been appointed by the present administration to be the U.S. Marshal. I'm very proud to say he started in our office.
Well, there you go.
I'm telling you, we got some good stuff coming in that office. But they reached out to us and we said, we've got X number of children that are missing. This is the last known information. And we worked with them. It's called Operation We Will Find You. Okay. And we did. Oh, wow. So if you're a parent, to your point, just reach out to us. It's our what's I'm trying to say? It's not only our duty, but it gives us great reward and gratification to be able to help find and rescue these girls.
And, one of the things you mentioned before about how we have a lot of Women of Tomorrow field trips that come to your office. And I'm like a huge advocate of having field trips that go to the state attorney's office, go to law enforcement, and because a lot of the girls, a lot of young people today don't have good experiences with law enforcement. And in order to feel protected, in order to understand your place in the world, in order to understand the place of law enforcement, you see all this backlash against law enforcement, but you have to understand what it's really about. And I can remember many, many years ago, a girl going to one of the field trips at one of our judges, one of our old friend judges, Judy Krieger, many years ago, which was a family court judge. And I remember she came back and she said to me, oh my God, I didn't know that they were there to help me. I thought they were there to hurt me. I had been told that no, these judges and law enforcement and all these things were a bad thing. And then I went there and I realized that she was there. She sat in on a bunch of cases, and she was like, oh my God, they were there to help me. And so it really changes the whole perspective when you see, people are afraid of prosecutors and this and that. But when you've been exposed to it, like in your office and the field trips that we do in your office, it changes the whole perspective of these girls. And you actually have one of our girls who's working for you now,
Yes,
right?
I know. It was so
Yeah.
wonderful to see that. And that's a good point that you raise. And I'm glad you brought me back to that for just a second, because that's part of the manipulation of the predators. They wire the thinking
Yep.
of a young person's brain. Is whatever you don't call them, because
Yep.
you know what's going to happen. And they're going to tell you they're going to do this, but they're really not. They're going to do this and all of that kind of stuff. And I remember, to your point also, a wonderful woman who runs the Lotus House, which is a great shelter. Constance, she's amazing. So she called me one day. It's a shelter for victims of domestic violence and their children. And so she called me one day. We have a great relationship. And she said, Kathy, I have all these girls in here. They don't want the police coming. And it's nothing against the police, right? I work with police every day and they're our partners. But I understood it. And so as we were learning, how do we reach these victims? They don't want to talk to, I think I said earlier, a man in uniform. It's not the uniform man's problem. It's just the reality of, like you said, bad experiences. If they're in a bad neighborhood, someone in their family was arrested or is in prison, which a lot of, unfortunately, our vulnerable girls come from single family homes, and sometimes mom's, not there for addiction reasons or otherwise. Dad might be in prison, and all they know is that that's an ugly world out there, and they don't want anything to do with it. But this program really works for them.
Katherine Fernandez Rundle, the state attorney for Miami-Dade County. It's so fun always being together. I love to be together.
I do.
Thank you for coming and doing this. And hopefully we're going to raise some money for Women of Tomorrow.
Yes, I see that. She never stops. But let me just say that thank you for doing this, because this is an important message that you're getting out there for women all over the country. I hope you go global on this.
So let us know one thing from today's episode that maybe resonated with you, and send it to us via social media or in the comments section. And we'll post it and read your responses to hopefully help other women who might have missed it and might have missed today's episode. Every episode is going to end with a Woman Now micro action, something simple that you can do now to improve your life and move yourself forward. Today's micro action is, there are places in the world, even today, where women cannot be educated, right? Because knowledge is power. Do one thing today to increase your knowledge and increase your power. Learn something new, educate yourself, claim your power. You mentioned it earlier today. Every step you take takes you one step closer to your future. And finally, we support the Women of Tomorrow Mentor and Scholarship Program and the thousands of young women who are served through mentorship, education, and the access to opportunity that we like to provide. If this conversation inspired you, please subscribe and follow us and learn more about Women of Tomorrow at womenoftomorrow.org. Your donation can help us change the world one young woman at a time. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for what you're doing.